Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of PCKC TV Cosplay Crafters Corner. I don't know what the official name we call this yet. Sometimes I just call it Cosplay Makers, but we always have very groovy people here with us, and we're going to be chatting today with Pro from Pros and Cons Cosplay.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. Let's start out paying the bills and saying thank you, of course, to U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop. You can check out a lot of great products here. I'm going to be advertising some of the products throughout the show today, but we want you to come in and check out everything that you see here today at U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop. We love to bring you the show every single week. Then we also have a number of great sponsors to help out Planet Comicon. We have NFM, Boulevard Brewing Company, U.S. Army, Kansas City WE, Geico, UMB Bank, Xfinity, 5 Hour Energy, T-Mobile, Kansas City Mavericks, Kansas City Live, and the great state of Oklahoma. Excellent. So, pros, real quick, KCK versus KCMO. I've heard you talk about this. What's up? What's up with that?
You know, I got to give it to KC Mo. You know, that's my hometown, my stomping grounds. And while I currently live in Kansas, KC Mo is where it's at. There's such a difference. And if you think they're the same, you are wrong. The end.
Excellent. Well, just a little bit of rivalry stuff there. I just wanted to say we are happily located here in Overland Park, Kansas. But you're over in Lawrence these days, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay to talk about? Okay.
Yeah. Over in Lawrence, Kansas, but I spend a lot of time in Kansas City in my free time because I just love it so much. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, hey, in this time at home, what have you been working on?
Good question. Not a ton, but also everything. I feel like it's just weird times, right? Of trying to figure out how to balance, recognizing that we're in a quarantine, the world's on fire lightly, and then, wanting to be creative. So I've been trying to make small projects. So Con and I have been making a lot of cloth masks for different organizations. I think we are just under 500 that we've been able to donate for free, which is really cool, to just different hospitals and other for-need organizations and things like that. So that's been nice. But I'm finally at the point where I think I can lightly commit to cosplay again. So we've got some fun costumes from our childhood that we're gonna try and bring back, or just old school stuff. I want to do some Yu-Gi-Oh cosplay. I really want to do Dragon Ball Z again, some ball gowns, because that's my jam. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I know some of the Dragon Ball Z voice actors, so if you get a couple of them, maybe we can give them a call and get them on conversation here with us and see what their character might think of the costume. So on.
That would be hilarious. So, I would love that.
Yeah. So tell us, for those who don't know Pros and Cons Cosplay, what do we need to know about you and Cons and what you guys do?
Yeah, so Con from Pros and Cons Cosplay is my partner in crime, sister, twin, and we've been cosplaying for about over 10 years at this point, just here and there in the Midwest. We also delve out to other states, and we do kind of a lot. We compete at the master level, so we're big competitors. That's kind of where we started cosplaying for the most part, is competing in cosplay contests, but we've since expanded to doing a lot of advocacy work, so making our cosplay community more inclusive for marginalized identities. Con admins several Facebook groups for things like that, and she kind of works in the cosplay contest community to kind of help things be more inclusive. And we also run a couple of cosplay contests here in the Kansas City area, and we do consulting for other conventions. We've kind of got our hands in a lot of different pots, so it's been nice. Clearly, we love cosplay. We love the community. We were brought up in it. It's my favorite, possibly only hobby. And so we have a lot of passion for getting to try new things and just working on builds and making our community more fun and inclusive for all. So that's kind of our mantra.
Okay, I wouldn't be a good talk show host if I didn't say I just caught you in a very blatant lie. Cosplay is far from your only hobby. I happen to know you are a otaku. Isn't that the correct term? You're an otaku, and you like playing video games as well.
I do. That's true.
So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about that. So,
I don't know if I watch as much anime as I used to. I'm definitely a huge Japanese video game fan. I love Final Fantasy. It's my favorite game franchise. Right now, I'm working through Final Fantasy VII. I just don't have a lot of attention, I guess, to playing it. So I'm trying to get through it. I'm very close to being done. Kingdom Hearts is my jam. When I did watch a lot of anime, though, Gundams were my thing. You can probably see my little wing Gundam back there. I really love building model Gundams, so that's my baby. My Wing Zero XXSG00W0 Wing Gundam Custom, perfect grade. Took me 34 hours to build. I'm always looking for new Gundam models, particularly perfect grade, so that's also my jam. So that's fair. I haven't built one in a really long time, though. Cosplay's taken up a lot of my time, but maybe I will come back to that at some point, because there's nothing better than building models.
Right on. So you have some very groovy cosplays, all the freaking time. What are you working on right now?
Right now, we're working on just something small. Again, trying to get back in the swing of doing cosplay. I really love Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day, so I watched that a lot. And so Tiffany and I thought it'd be fun to do Rex and Weevil from that. So that's what I'm kind of working on these days. I've got some contest pieces that I'm trying to get together for the 2020, 21 years. Who knows, whenever conventions sort of come back being more mainstream and we can compete again. Getting some stuff ready for those. So those are a little bit of a secret until those get revealed. But yeah, just kind of tooling around, messing around with what fabrics I happen to have and going from there.
Oh, that's just absolutely fantastic. Well, hey, tell you what, today we're going to be talking about getting folks prepared for contests and everything else. But we do have a question from John Boone popped up right away. John Boone asked, would you ever try a Gundam cosplay? They are so wow.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, that's Khan's dream cosplay, is to roll up as a Gundam. I am more ruffles and feathery, fluffy stuff, and she really likes anything that involves a lot of math and geometry, and generally it's hard. So, but we've talked about it. I think it is definitely on our bucket list to do a Gundam. I would love to be either Death Scythe or Wing Zero, and I think she really wants that as well. So it'll probably happen one day. I'm not really looking forward to that because I hate math, but if I have to.
If you have, well, maybe you could set it up where it's she walks around in the Gundam suit, and then you walk around as the person outside of the Gundam suit. Well, the pilot, yeah.
Yeah. We could, but we're both so extra that I can't see it. I feel like we'd end up having to both be giant Gundam. It's going to be a mess for whoever our handler is going to be. I apologize in advance, friends. Just look forward to it. I'll buy you dinner.
That's awesome. Excellent. Awesome. Hey, so yeah, I want to talk a little bit real quick. You guys are makeup extraordinaires. You love to play with makeup. I'd love to have you out here at the shop and just let you play and talk about all the cool stuff that we have. And maybe we'll do that when it's a little bit safer. But one of the products that I want to talk to our folks at home about is brand new in store this week is from Cinema Secrets. This is a makeup sanitizing spray. And remember, when you come in and talk to us here at US Toy, use the code PCC Live 20 and save yourself 20% off your purchase of cosplay supplies all the way through October 31st. So we're going to take care of you through Halloween with your costume supplies. Use that code and let us know you were watching. Cinema Secrets sent us a bunch of disinfectant, sanitizing spray, brush cleaner, so on and so forth. So best to take care of yourself during this at-home time with products from Cinema Secrets, like the makeup sanitizing spray. You just spray it on and let it dry. But let's get back to Tiffany. No, Tamara. Tamara rhymes with a camera.
Yeah, there we go.
She is the pro. So I learned this week there is one way to tell you and your sister apart, and it's the number of freckles. I think Tiffany has 17 more freckles than you do, right?
Is that true? I don't know. That sounds right.
We'll have to check and see. I have two of my closest friends who are twins as well, but they have the Harry Potter thing going on. They used to mess with people where one of them would keep long hair and the other one would keep short. And then they would at points meet somewhere in the middle where one would start trimming their hair back and the other one would let their hair grow out.
That's awesome.
And then they'd switch places. And so twins have the coolest and most ornery abilities ever. So I think that's just very cool. So tell us, how do you choose what contest you want to be a part of and what you do to get ready?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I come at this again as a longtime competitor, and I run a couple of shows, and have talked with a lot of other showrunners as well, and competitors, and so that's kind of where the knowledge base for this is coming from. But when you're thinking about contests, there's so many different types, right? There's contests that are really craftsmanship oriented. There's contests that are really performance oriented. There's contests that are really about that just sort of big, shiny audience wow factors. It just really kind of depends on who the audience is and who's putting on the show. Things where you see a lot of wow factor types of costumes, or big shinies as we call it, are things where, they're not really so much concerned about the craftsmanship as they are how it looks when it's on stage, what the audience reaction is, how big and shiny it looks. And you see a lot of those at just sort of larger productions. Casino halls will do them quite a bit for Halloween. Maybe some giant city productions will do things like that. It's really about making sure that the audience has a good time. Other shows where craftsmanship is more centric, you're looking at things where you might have a panel of judges who are really experienced crafters. You may be scheduled for a time where you have to spend with the judges to talk through what your craftsmanship and your construction was like. And then there's performance-oriented shows, and they often are coupled with craftsmanship shows, but that's when they're looking at not only your craftsmanship, but also how well you are able to emulate your character on stage. Oftentimes you're given some level of time to be on stage, given some kind of background music or an opportunity to create your own staging. It's sort of where theater and cosplay collide. And so when you're thinking about a type of show that you want to enter, I think the important thing is to do your research, right? Your homework on the show that you're entering. Oftentimes you'll get a lot of clues from the rules. If you see a lot of craftsmanship-centric rules, it's probably a craftsmanship-centric show. If you don't see a ton of rules about any of that stuff, maybe it's more of a big shiny type of thing. And so I think it's really important to think about that when you're entering a cosplay contest, because you don't want to dump a ton of work into something that won't matter in the judging room, right? In my big shiny contests, I don't necessarily care so much about making sure all my internal scenes and construction stuff is super perfect, because it's not going to matter from, 10, 15, 20 feet away from an audience perspective. That's not the goal. Versus shows where I know I'm going to be judged really tightly on my construction techniques. I'm going to spend more time on making sure all of my internal scene work is a big deal. If you're looking at those shows that are more construction and performance based, that's when you kind of look at the type of show it is, right? Some shows have a lot of really high level competitors. Some shows it's more middle ground. Other shows it just kind of is a blend of everybody. And so that can also give you some clues about what kind of show you might want to prepare for.
Nice. Well, hey, we got some audience interaction coming in.
Oh, great.
Bruce Holt from Crazy Costumes with Bruce Holt says, love Pros and Cons. What's been your favorite cosplay?
Oh, we love you too, Bruce. You're great. Bruce competed at Planet a couple of years back, and that's where we got to meet. Bruce is a very talented filmsmith. I think that my favorite cosplay right now is my Sakizo pieces, and in a little bit, I'll actually go through kind of this particular piece as my demo for how to get through your judging presentation. But I love Sakizo because I love ruffles and ball gowns. This one actually sitting next to me, you can see a little bit of her. This is my favorite, I think. Her name's Juliet. She's gorgeous. Maybe that's vain, but I really like the artwork and the style of her. She got to incorporate all the different things, all the pretties and shinies and stones. So that's, I think, my favorite costume thus far. But I don't know. I also really enjoyed being the Thundercat, so that was fun.
That is the costume you were wearing when I first met you.
And, I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I comment every time the story comes up that I had such a hard time, and I actually bit into my tongue a number of times not to yell at you guys just saying Thundercats ho, because I wasn't sure how that would go over.
We were so worried. We were like, no one's gonna know who this is. This show's old. But we went there and we got to wear it, and it was so much fun because it was not just kids who recognized it, but also parents. So that was helpful. I was like, oh, good. I don't feel like I'm as ancient as I feel sometimes. So that was good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and a lot of awkward 40-year-old bald dudes also recognized you. So yeah, it was
so
it was a great set of costumes.
It was fun.
Hey, Teresa Caballos says, how do you pick out your competition cosplays? Is it based on genre or challenge appeal?
Good question. Hi, Teresa. I pick them based on the show itself. So I think one of the important things to do, first of all, is to read your rules. As I kind of mentioned before, each show and each contest is different, and sometimes they will cater their cosplay contest situation to the mission of the show. For example, if you're at a anime-centric show or a Japanese culture convention, oftentimes they will have a requirement that your costume needs to be from Japanese origin. And so to fit along with the not-for-profit status and some of the other educational missions of that show. So picking a costume that isn't of Japanese pop culture origin would not be within the rules, so I wouldn't pick a costume for that. That isn't a Japanese origin for that, or Japanese culture, pop culture origin for that. What I would also think of too is who are the competitors there. I typically look at previous winners to see kind of what the competition bracket looks like. If it looks like it's a high-level contest with a lot of really, really talented masters, then I'll pick a costume that has a lot more bells and whistles on it, something that I can showcase way more techniques, something that I can really kind of get into the detailed nitty-gritty of lots of different types of fabric manipulation or other things that I can put into it. If it's a smaller convention where I'm just kind of doing it for fun and don't really care so much about the prize, then maybe that's a time where I whip out something that I have, just kind of chilling out in my back closet that I haven't worn yet, or I just do something for fun. So really thinking about the type of contest that you're in is really big and important. Another thing I'll say is that you want to make sure these are opportunities where you get to demonstrate something that you are able to do well. I'm a one who really enjoys the challenge of trying something new, but I don't like to try something that is going to for sure fail, if that makes sense. Like if I'm so completely beyond the capability of this particular skill set, I want to make sure I practice it a few times before I enter it into a contest. But if it's something that I think I could probably figure this out and make it look really polished, that will help me pick a contest piece as well. If I've never done, I don't know, I can't even think of a good example. I've tried most things at this point. If I've never done vacuforming before, then I might not try that out for my first major contest. But if I feel confident in my ability to figure it out, then I might give it a shot for a contest. But this is really a time to show off the skills that you have and kind of show off that perfection. Judges are looking for your pieces to be polished, well put together. They're looking for all those finishing techniques. Not so much necessarily that you tried a new thing, but that you tried the new thing and were able to execute it really well. So.
Right on. Well, okay, riddle me this, Batman. If you had all the resources to you that you needed, what would be the contest you would want to compete in, and with what costume?
Good question. I don't know. I really have started to enjoy more the different types of contests that there are. Kansas City has its own culture. West Coast has its own culture. East Coast has its own culture. Chicago has its own culture. And so I kind of jive with whatever contest culture I'm in. I one day I'd like to enter some international types of contests. I think that would be fun. But I think after I figure out the contest is usually how I pick out what costume I want to compete in. Other folks do it totally different, where they make a costume and then they're like, what contest does this fit in? That just doesn't work well with my brain in terms of how I organize information. So, and really the problem is the motivation. I organize motivation by deadlines. So if that's kind of how I work through things. But yeah, I don't know. I think through what my skill sets are and what I like to try. I've really started to get into casting and molding recently with resin and smooth cast products. So contests where I get to try some of those things out. I know that I've tried to work really hard on my ball gown making these past couple of years, so I really love doing those. But I don't know, sometimes inspiration strikes me randomly and I think, I'd really like to build this random Gundam alien situation, and that's what I choose for the time. But I try and generally pick a costume based on the contest I'm entering. So one day when we're back up and running and contests tend to happen again, I'll sort around and see what's actually going to take place and then pick a costume based on that. Probably.
Excellent. So there's a couple of questions coming in. Teresa also asked, how long in advance do you start working on cosplay for competition? By that smile, I think there's some extra story behind that.
I'm terrible about time management, so that's my personal philosophy. I'm going to tell you what you should do and then not to do it. What do you think? Which is what I do.
She also asked, how do you manage your time for building cosplay?
I know Teresa's building strategies as well. We were both very similar, like, oh God, right at the end of our time management skills. But I think we also know our working style very well. So I'll start by answering this way. One, know what your working style is, right? Like I said, I work better when I have a deadline. If I don't have one, it's just not going to happen. And so with cosplay contests, that's why I plan, okay, I'm going to go to this contest in February. I probably need to start building it earlier than February 1st, right? Generally speaking, though, for my larger builds, I like to plan for how long it takes me to get any supplies I need shipped, and then how long it takes me to execute X skill. I'm a decently fast person when it comes to just sewing things, but I'm not fast at drafting. So I put a factor in, okay, it generally takes me X amount of time to draft a brand new bodice if I don't already have a pattern existing for it, or if I haven't already drafted something for this in the past. It's going to take me X amount of time, and then I try and triple that number because I know how I am as a person, and I get lazy. So I always take this is how much time I think it's going to take me, triple that time, and then that's what I go with. I generally try not to start any new competition piece for less than 3 months in advance, unless I know it's something that can really get done super duper quickly. Con crunch isn't fun. We all joke about it in the cosplay community of like, oh God, my cosplay's not done. It's hours before it has to be ready for the show floor. The horror stories of painting in the hotel room. While we've all done it, it's not really great. And so do not recommend. If you can, just try and plan things out as quickly as you can. Because I think one thing too is, contests are very stressful. And take that how you will. Some people handle stress better than others, but I know I don't like to feel rushed, and the less time I have to put my piece together, the worse it is. You don't want to be in a situation where you're putting your costume together entirely in green room, and you certainly don't want to be in a situation to where you are, in the judging circle and your costume isn't finished, because your judges are going to see that. They're going to notice if your seams aren't done. They're going to notice if your thing is still dripping with wet paint. So give yourself more time to give stuff to there. We've all been there. Again, like, I'm not saying that as a person not at a glass house. I have certainly run very behind on many, many costume contests. But so as a cautionary tale, give yourself at least a couple months, and then however much time you think you need, triple it if you're gonna try some new techniques for sure.
Excellent. So we got something here in the store. Just wanted to say hi. It's a Stick Effects mask. They're silicone masks.
They're so cool.
This is like actually week 6 that I've been able to stick this to my face. There's a little bit of stick right there, but I think that's more because of my personal sweat glands. Just need to be dried off because I'm a moist fink most of the time. But these masks are awesome. I know you guys have been playing around with one that we sent your way. But these are just freaking awesome. And so if you're watching this and you need a mask, check out the Stick Effects mask that we sell here. They are $24.99 each, but of course you can take a 20% discount with that PCC Live 20 and pick up stuff. But I put on this mask to ask a very specific question. Do you have, and this comes from a Miss Tiffany Dixon. I wonder if you know if she's any relation or anything, but
I don't know her.
Do you have tips for competing with other people as a group / duo?
Don't do it. It's the worst. Your partner's the worst person. Okay. I personally love it. I think, Con / Tiffany and I have been, together the entirety of our lives because we were twins and we're also born together. So we know very much each other's working style. We're best friends. So it works out great because we know what we're going to be like under stress, and we know each other's strengths and weaknesses are. So I think if you can have a cosplay partner in crime, it's great because you can have someone else to bounce ideas off of. It makes the long nights of sadly sewing over your machine and painting over parts a lot less stressful. But at the same point, thinking about your judging piece, you want someone who is going to follow through, right? Because when you're judging, you're both generally judged together. What I tell people is, you should factor in both your costume and the person you're competing with. If you are competing with another person, your scores are averaged together, and that is what creates your final score. So if you're competing in duo, I'm sobbing. If your costume is really great and you work at the master level, and your partner's cosplay is really beginner level, it's gonna change your average, and so you might score lower if that person doesn't do as well in their piece. Additionally, your class is generally at the level of the highest person who's competing. So a lot of shows have the general delineation of master, intermediate, beginner, journeyman, or novice, or however they delineate it. But essentially, someone who's a beginner, someone who's mid-level, and then someone who's real advanced. They generally will make you submit your work, even if you're going to deal at the person at the highest level. So if you have a beginner and a master, you're going to be competing together at the master level. So that's just something to think about, that your potential beginner partner will be judged at the master level. So it'll be a little bit harder of expectation there for people in your group. But I think it's also important to again, kind of with that timeline piece, you have to be cognizant of the timeline that your partner works with. Judges don't necessarily judge you differently if you have a single person versus a duo. It's just kind of that average piece. So if you're really great at working in a team, awesome, it works to your advantage. If you work better solo, don't have a partner. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Excellent. Well, hey, while we're talking about how judges judge, I have always had a question, and it's probably because most of the contests I get to are in this area. I go to a number of shows throughout the country, and I announce and I MC cosplay contests, but I don't get to see what the judging criteria always is. Is there a standard set of rules or a standard set of what judges look for? Or is it just kind of willy-nilly all over the place? How do cosplayers even expect to be judged fairly if there's no standards?
That's a really good
question. Can you help us out with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent question. So I will say there isn't really a standard. Each show does. I should say there's no real written standard. There are a couple of guidelines that everyone kind of generally follows. There's a couple of guiding organizations that have produced a lot of really great content for cosplay content showrunners, and there's some just general things that people follow. But there's no hard line fast rule that says if you run a cosplay contest, you have to have X. There's just some best practices. That said, that's why I always tell people you got to read your rules because each show might do things a little bit differently. What I will say is, generally speaking, in craftsmanship-centric contests, judges should be looking at X factors. They shouldn't be looking at Y factors. And if they're looking at Y factors, which I'll talk about, it makes them a bad judge. But I think it really comes to, you have to learn the culture of that contest, do your homework on what contest it is. That way you know what it is they're looking for. So, for example, I'll talk about craftsmanship judging. In general, judges are looking for how well you have executed the thing. They should be looking at how well tailored the costume is to your body, how much it is similar to what the character might wear based on reference pictures that you provide. They're looking at, did you put it together correctly, right? Are there pieces that are flying off, broken? How well did you finish things? Did you use the appropriate finishing techniques on your costume? And they also look to see your material choice, right? Does it make sense for you to use Y material to execute X thing? A lot of it also depends on what class you're at. So I'll say in general, that's what judges are looking for is, right, how well you've managed to execute the costume. Beginners, they're really just looking to see, hey, did you try to put this together well? Are your seams straight? Did you cut your foam correctly? Did you try to paint it? Is there like some level of effort here that shows that or execution here that shows that you've tried to make this character look like the reference photo that you have? Intermediate, they're looking for more of that. Perhaps you're sort of honing those techniques, so different types of seam lines. Maybe they're looking for more different types of techniques. So if you're not just sewing, but also foam work, or maybe intro to electronics, or intro to resin casting, or something like that. At the master's level, we just call that the bloodbath. It's essentially a free-for-all of who executed the most things the best. And I tell people too, though, another thing to think about is, judges aren't concerned, or shouldn't be concerned, with things like how much money you spent on your costume, right? We all know that costuming is a hobby. All hobbies that aren't mandatory generally are very expensive. So, if you have to, it's not a money game, right? It should be, did you use the correct materials? And however you ended up getting them is great, but does it make sense for what you were doing? How much money you spent on the cosplay should never be a factor. I also tell people how much time you spent on it also isn't a factor, right? What takes me, 40 years to finish may take someone 10 minutes to finish. And if mine ends up looking worse than the person who took 10 minutes to do it, that person who took 10 minutes to do it did the better job. They would get the more points, right? I also say that judges should not be looking for things when we're talking about character fidelity and how accurate something is. They shouldn't be looking at, are you the same size as a small anime character, or are you the same color or race, or do you not use a mobility device, or things like that. They should never be factoring in pieces of your identity in judging. If you cannot help the color of skin that you have, and nor should you, that should not be a factor. Same thing for your body type. None of us would fit the body type of any cartoon character for the most part. Like, they're just not human proportions. You didn't suddenly learn how to fly, and so if you need to use mobility devices or corrective vision or whatever, that should not be factored into your judging. It's truly just how that costume translates onto your body as a human person with the body that you have. And I think that's really important too. And sometimes I think it scares folks off because I'm like, well, I don't, look like a small Japanese schoolgirl, so how should I compete? Well, I'm a 30-year-old Black, 6 foot tall woman with weight, and so there's no way I would fit that body type either. It's all about tailoring the costume to fit the body that you have. So I think that's really important. If judges are doing that, they are bad judges. That's just the all and all, point blank, period. They shouldn't be judging you on those things. Other things that judges look for across the board are just that execution piece, right? Just making sure that you've made your costume look as best as you can in that moment. They shouldn't be factoring on how famous you are. They shouldn't be factoring how not famous you are. Again, how much money you have, things like that. So those are some things to really think about when you're going to judging. It's not those things you can't help, but rather, what it is that you were able to accomplish.
Sure. Now, on the other side of that, John Boone asks, when you compete, how much documentation should you bring along, if any?
It's a good question. I think that you want to read your rules. Oftentimes, craftsmanship-centric shows will request that you bring a progress book of some kind. And there's a really great resource I'll share with people. It's called Cosplay Contest Support Group. Con's actually the administrator for that group, and they have a lot of really great resources from competitors in making progress books. Progress books, and this is actually a good segue into the judging experience, but progress books are an opportunity for you to share with the judges what it is that you did to show that you do know some of those techniques. When you go into judging, typically you're given a small period of time to go through how you did your entire costume. Some shows it's a minute, some shows it's 5, other shows it's 10, sometimes it's 20. It just kind of depends on the show, and typically they will share with you in advance how much time you have to tell the judges what you did. There will be times, though, where you can't get through all of it, and sometimes you're wearing a costume to where you can't show all of your internal seams. So a progress book is a great way to show, hey, this is, some of that stuff I might not have been able to address, or if you had questions that you weren't able to ask of me during my narrative, I can go back and reference. It's also a great way to see that you're not a cheater. So if you were clearly in the picture sewing the thing, or clearly in the picture painting the thing, or we can see that, the picture that you have provided to us of the product is the same as what you walked in with, that also helps us to determine any cheater pumpkin eaters coming into our contests. So when you're creating a book, I say this and people still try it. I'm like, look, what are you doing? So it's really good to provide as much content as you can in those. I say hit the highlights in your progress book. You want to show any of those internal scenes, like I mentioned. Include character reference photos. So if this person has a giant bell sleeve with 10,000 rhinestones on it, get a close up of that bell sleeve from the character and show those 10,000 rhinestones. But there is a difference between overloading it and not overloading it. Like I said, you're given 5 minutes with the judges, and they have between 5 and 10 minutes after you've left the room, generally speaking, to go through all the other contestants and to kind of do some double reference checks. So you're not doing yourself any favors by creating, a 10,000 page progress book. Con and I compete together routinely, and I think we've never had a progress book be longer than 10 pages. So maybe even 7 might be our longest progress book page limit. So you want to keep it short and tight, make it very clear and obvious what it is that you've made. And hit those highlights for the judges. That way, if there are questions like, oh, I didn't realize this person did French scenes or whatever on the inside, they can quickly reference it.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you were talking about just some resources for cosplayers.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Evans Photography is running backstage. Thank you so much, Dustin. And he posted up that group for people to check out a lot of those resources.
Yeah.
But here I was at the shop. I was here at the shop at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop, and I came across some books that, they were written a little while ago, but I think they've still got some good information from a cosplayer by the name of Svetlana Quint. And so I enjoy looking through all this. Maybe she might be someone we might need to bring on someday and talk to us about some resources. There's one here on LEDs, one on working with foam and thermoplastics, and one with brushes and acrylics. So if you are a cosplayer and you need a little bit of hints and you don't have those books at home, come on into the shop and peruse through our copies of are you familiar with this cosplayer?
I think I might be. She's pretty amazing, pretty phenomenal. Yeah. She may have been a judge for Planet one year. Last year, I believe. Yeah, she's phenomenal builder.
So do you think you could connect us with her, and so we could ask about some of the things and so on and so forth?
That might be an interesting opportunity there, Jelly Bean. What do you think?
I think we should chase that down. I think the date of July 12th, we've still got an open spot for an interview. So I've been booking a bunch of shows, but if you can help us connect with Svetlana, am I saying that right?
Svetlana.
Svetlana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is she popular with cosplayers?
She may be pretty popular. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if I have a super strong pulse, but I think a couple people might know who she is.
Yeah. Well, would you and Cons like to come on the show and help interview if we can get her?
I would think that Con and I would be definitely on board for that. Yes.
Okay. Well, because I'm just a cheerleader for cosplay, working as an MC. But maybe we can get Can We Cosplay on July 12th and start making and see if we can make something like that happen. That'd be very groovy.
It would be.
Hey, let's see. Teresa has another question, and she's swearing that she'll stop, but she really doesn't have to. But she wants to know the pros and cons of competing as a walk-on versus a skit.
Bless for the beautiful word pun. Thank you, Teresa. I think that there's a lot, depending on what your jam is, right? Walk-ons, generally you get X amount of time to walk on stage. Depending on the show that you're in, you may or may not be allotted some to bring your own music. If you're doing a performance, that means the show has allowed you to bring your own audio to do a miniature skater performance. I think there's pros and cons to each. I generally prefer the walk-on situation. I don't love the performance element of things. I'm not a theater person, I'm a crafter, but for folks who really do love that and who are really dedicated, and that's a huge part of cosplay, is that character representation part. I think skits are an awesome idea. The problem is, just as I said with duos, the more you have, the more you have to be judged on, right? And so if you're entering a performance-based contest where you do get that allotment of stage time, they're judging you on the full time that you're utilizing your stage space. So if you have a minute of content, then hopefully you can tell your story in a minute. If you have 2 minutes of content, hopefully you're able to accurately portray your content in that 2 minutes. I think a lot of folks get a little bit caught up in what to do with that stage time. One is you want to be able to fill the space if you can, know what your skill sets are. You also want to know to be able to tell a story with your costume that even if someone who's unfamiliar with your fandom will be able to understand. A lot of folks kind of fall into the inside jokes trap where they'll go and do a really great performance, but it's full of inside jokes or content that the audience might not be familiar with, and so they don't quite get it. Or folks who may not be used to being on a stage. You'll get folks who may not utilize the stage piece as well, or aren't used to kind of having grandiose body movements and things like that. So you just want to make sure that when you are doing performances, that you have folks look at it first and make sure it makes sense before you get on stage. If I had an ideal world, for me personally, I just like to walk on stage in my costume and then quickly leave. But I think performances make it a lot of fun. I think it makes the audiences really love performances and skits. That it does make the show really, really exciting. And I think, it's a really great, another alternative for people to express creativity and crafters too. There's no, the performance scene is also very craftsmanship oriented as well. I've seen some insane stage prop work and things that people have done out of cardboard to just make stuff pop out, like pop-up books and just crazy stuff. So there's a lot of craftsmanship that can go into it as well. So I think it just kind of depends on what you're looking for and how well you're, again, able to execute the thing.
Excellent. Hey, we got about 10, 13 minutes still left, and we haven't even started talking about Juliet yet.
Oh, yes,
but
yes.
I did want to, I did, before we get into that, I want to talk about these two shades of blue. One is sky, and the other one is lagoon blue. And we've got lots of cosplayers here in Kansas City who will order Paradise makeup from Maron, and will buy it more expensive than we sell it at the store, and get the wrong shade of blue. So please, before you even think about ordering on Amazon, come into US Magic Costume Shop, check out all the colors of Paradise that we have available. We may even have other makeup along the same lines from Maron or Ben Nye or anyone else. And it may come off a lot better than what you want, but you can come into our store and you can see things first before you order, and probably get it a little bit cheaper, especially if you use that 20% in-store discount, PCC Live 20. So if you're looking to do any testing with your costumes, or if you're doing any of these online contests, please come get your resources from us here at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop, and test them out before you get burned by just buying something online. Yeah, let's talk about Juliet.
Yeah.
Dustin Evans just posted something. Oh my gosh, Dustin. Okay, so this is for the Whovians. Rose went away, so the doctor is blue. Ask Donna, where's the doctor? She'll reply, Doctor Who. Sarah Jane and Martha, and now both the Pawns had their fun with the doctor, and now they've all gone. So ask me again why the TARDIS is blue and there's a sad man inside with both hearts torn in two.
Aww. I'm not a Doctor Who follower, but that sounds really cute. I liked it.
Yeah, Dustin's showing his Angliophile right there, and that's a thing. So Dustin, thank you for that. But yeah, we've got a number of different types of blues, and we do have a TARDIS here in the store if you want to come check it out. It is smellier on the inside. So tell us, that's Juliet, right?
Yeah.
That's how you introduced her?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it.
So I brought Juliet with me because I think a lot of times folks are confused or just scared about what the judging process looks like. And so I wanted to go through how a judging situation works. So essentially, depending on the show, but most often if you have some sort of judging block, you'll be assigned a time to go meet with the judges and being told how long you have to go through your character. So you'll arrive at your judging time, ideally early, and I know that Con and other folks who have worked with me in the past are like, when have you ever been early? But I'm usually on time for like cosplay contests. guests usually. So you'll show up early, ideally, chill out in the space, and then be invited into the judging room. The judges will have your name and character on their judging sheet, and they will be essentially waiting for you to kind of launch into your spiel about your costume. So I want to take some time to talk about how to do that, and I wanted to use Juliet as an example because I recently competed with her at a show, and it was a lovely time. So people are like, well, how do I cram all the times that I spent, 4 or 5 months and hundreds of hours onto a thing into my judging space? So let me tilt towards Julia. I don't know if you can quite see. Okay. So what I generally do is I start from head to toe. And as you can see, with like my weird like computer tilting, is that I generally kind of, again, start from head to toe and go pretty quickly. So I would say, hello, my name is Pros and Cons Cosplay, just so that the judges make sure that they have my name correct on the sheet. And I say, this is Juliet, a Sakizo design that we created. So I start with my wig. If I styled my wig, obviously my mannequin does not have a wig. And I would say, so Juliet has 3 different corsets, starting with the neck corset that I drafted using X Person's patterns. I think for this one I used RNA black patterns. Either way, I used RNA black patterns to create. It is fully aligned, made with velvet and vinyl and hand casted resin. So this is resin that I hand cast. Next, I go down to the bodice. So I created my other 2 corsets. They're both fully lined. One's out of velvet. I clearly lined those with full denim. I talk about the silhouette of the century that I utilize. So that piece, I say corset 1 is laced in the back with hand hammered grommets. Corset 2 is put together using busts that I sized and hammered myself with detailing that I hand dyed with my lace. Then I move on to the next part of my costume. So I would then talk about the sleeves. I made these figure 8 style sleeves that are attached on with ties. They're also fully lined with upholstery fabric, and each sleeve is 36 pieces that I designed using a beach ball pattern. And then I show off the details as I'm talking, right? So I'd say these are attached using a drawstring on the inside. I individually sewed each of these sections together and then tucked it out at the bottom. Then I would talk about the skirts, which you probably can't see super well from here. But again, something you might not be able to see. So you can kind of a little bit see from here. There's like a skirt situation here. So I would say, I have an external skirt. Juliet's actually comprised of, I would have known this earlier in the day when I was thinking about this, of 3 different skirts. The first skirt is an external skirt that I rouged using upholstery velvet and an internal crepe that I hand rouged using a bobby pin, and then I utilized other patterning to make the more external skirt. Those are decorated with hand-dyed lace, more pearls, and hand cast resin. Each thing is fully lined. All the internal skirts are fully lined. The second skirt on there is hand smocked honeycomb smocking that I decorated with individual rhinestones and crystals. You can kind of see a little bit from here. And then underneath that is a petticoat that I created out of just a general satin that I hand turned the pleats. And then lastly, my internal hoop skirt is something that I boned and drafted myself and put together. So I stopped a little bit in between there and there to kind of explain to you all what I was talking about, but that was a really quick head to toe of what I did in this costume. I didn't need to go through, I threaded my sewing machine at 8:30 in the morning and stopped sewing and changed my bobbin out 28 times, or here's how many, whatever I did to do that. I actually broke 3 sewing machines making this dress. It's fine. But as you can see, I hit the highlights, right? Like, it's not interesting to hear, oh, I just did a standard stitch, but it is interesting to say, okay, well, this is fully lined. And so I didn't have to take off my corset on the inside for you to see. So if I just said it's fully lined on the inside, and I didn't want to get undressed in the judging room, but it's fully lined on the inside. So I was able to say that, and I provided pictures of that in my progress book, right? Hopefully judges know what a lining is and can know what that is without having to do a ton of explanation. I talk about doing my hand cast resin, right? That's an interesting piece because that goes towards your craftsmanship score, right? It's better than, I shouldn't say better, but it's more technically complex than buying rhinestones and crystals for your own piece. I talk about sizing my own corsets, which is a skill set that I wanted to highlight because making corsets isn't easy. I talk about those skill sets that I really wanted to highlight, like the smocking I talked about. Smocking is a type of fabric manipulation that is actually sort of a old-timey elastic for making things stretch, but also super pretty. And that's a detail that I wanted to highlight. I mentioned that I use French seams in my products as well because I think French seams are a difficult seam to get correct. And so I wanted to highlight that that's something that I did. I also talk about how many skirts there are. I think numbers go a long way when you talk about, I didn't have to go into intricate detail of like, I made, I sized out each piece of fabric and, wanted to create a booth. So I did X number of skirts, but I can just say I did a number of skirts and it really helped my final piece come together. If I have extra time, and I rarely do, because again, I work with another person. Con was with me, and so Con needed to have time to go through her spiel. So I wanted to make sure that I did it in like 2.5 minutes so that she could have her 2.5 minutes to go through her contest piece as well. I talk a little bit about in my progress book for Juliet about some historical accuracy for the type of skirt that I wanted to create. I just essentially just looked at a bunch of historical costuming and was like, what kind of silhouette is this similar to? And then picked patterns related to that. And I think that's another piece that judges are interested in of why you chose different materials. Juliet's mostly synthetic fabrics, which you wouldn't have found in an old historical time period time. But I did use heavier materials because I knew what it would look like on top of a skirt and wanted that kind of volume. So, it doesn't necessarily fit to historical accuracy, but I made choices that made sense for that character. And that's something that your judges are going to want to hear about it and to know about. Practice your spiel. Usually on the ride up to the convention, Con and I will go through our spiels together and kind of talk through, okay, well, here's what I'm going to say, here's what you're going to say. If we have techniques that we both did, for instance, curling a wig or something like that, I may leave that off of my spiel so that she can share on hers. And things like that. So just kind of being aware of what your time is and hitting the highlights of your costume. You don't have to go into super duper detail, but you do have to talk. Oftentimes too, judges will come and look at your stuff. So while I'm talking, I usually am prepared like with my arms up and ready. And I'm like totally cool. People touch me. Like I will, throw my body on the table if I have to for judges to see a seam I'm super proud of. And so I just want look at my seams, look at them. And so just being prepared for that. Whenever I judge, I always ask if it's okay if I can get up close and turn your seams and look at stuff up close, because some people aren't really comfortable with that, and that's okay. If that's the case, then bring a handler with you who might be able to turn your seams for you, or just let your person know that you're not comfortable with that, but you can maybe point out what they might see underneath in the progress book, or talk about them without having someone come close to you. So that's my quick and dirty on how to prepare for your judging time. It should not be a point where judges, I'll say this too, judges should not be utilizing that time to personally grandstand. This is not your time to hear about how great and accomplished the judges or whatever. It's not a time for the judges to be giving you constructive criticism. That time is yours to share what you created. Judges should be looking at your piece compared to others. They're not trying to determine whether or not your costume is objectively good or bad. They're trying to determine whether or not your costume is better than another person's costume. And I think that's a really important piece too when you're giving your spiel. So don't think of it so much as like, oh God, they're going to think that my costume is terrible. If everyone entered a terrible costume in the contest, there would still be a winner. So it's all about how your costume fares against the competition. So just thinking about that when you're going into judging as well.
Right on. Well, hey, Tamara, that's been such an insightful conversation today. You were so incredibly knowledgeable. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your intelligence. And you've just got a lot of great information. We do have one last question from the audience.
Sure.
Well, first, Teresa tells us that's why you own multiple sewing machines.
It's true. Teresa owns like 10, 15 at this point. I'm trying to get off her level. It's great.
I almost wish there was like a cosplay sewing machine challenge of show us all the sewing machines you've gone through.
Yes. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious. Here's how many I've broken in the process. This is probably the most I've broken in a while.
Then Bruce Holt makes sure to ask, Have you ever made a total costume out of EVA foam?
I have not. I know Bruce has, because Bruce is a really good foam smith, as I mentioned earlier. I like to do a combination of things. My jam is sewing and foam work when I can, and so I haven't done one yet, but I have incorporated like large pieces of armor. Con actually did Wrestler from Final Fantasy 12, and it was EVA foam with a Warbler overlay, and that was a full body armor piece. But I just feel like it's hard to move around in armor. So not that it's easy to move around in like a 45-inch hoop skirt, but I just hate sweating. So, but maybe one day. Maybe one day. I like fun.
Excellent. Well, Bruce has said he's gone through 3 sewing machines. Teresa is saying she's gone through 20, and that's not an exaggeration. And Elise reminds her that she forgot one over at her house. Elise, that's an amazing question. We may go over time. How do you safely pack your costumes for travel?
Good question. So I'm all about preserving my costume and my contest piece. I'm really big on making sure that I have enough vehicle space. So I try and pack everything in one giant garment bag if I can. Juliet collapses really nicely into a big garment bag. And then I put like 50 hangers on there to make sure it's together. I also try and pair things that I'm going to wear in the order that I'm going to put them on. So I put all of my underpinnings and like tights and stuff in one bag, and I hang that next to the next layer of stuff that I'm going to be putting on, because I know in the morning when I'm trying to get ready for judging, immediately my brain shuts off and I forget all the pieces that I need to do. When you're storing giant wigs, boxes are really good. If you're storing fabric, things will mostly collapse. Be aware of what the product that your piece is made out of. If it's made of Worbla, don't put it in the sun in your car. We may have had that problem once or twice. It's fine, but because it'll melt. So being aware of where it's positioned in your car. My friends who travel with me for conventions know that we'll try and rent out a giant vehicle just to make sure we have space, because I don't think I've made a small costume in a really long time. But when you're building things too, it's also really good to build it with the idea that you're going to have to make it collapsible, right? If you're making a giant 6-foot tall spear, maybe put a break in it that you can like take apart and store horizontally in your car would be good.
Very groovy. Hey, thank you so much for all the great answers. Yeah, if you want to work on getting in touch with that Cam Wee cosplay person and let us know, we've got the open date of July 12th. We do have a couple other contests or a couple other shows coming up. Tuesday we've got Talking Comics with Eric Basuldwa it'll be at 7 p.m. Tuesday night, where you can talk with William Bender up and Chris Jackson and that artist Eric Basuldra, and I'm not familiar enough with his work to be able to give you any kind of good reference. However, I can tell you next Sunday, the Cosplay Crafter Series will be with HDC Fabrication, Tim Harrison, and we're going to be talking, he and I are going to goof off and talk a lot about The Mandalorian, and because he's doing a lot of builds with those right now, and the entire reason that I wanted him booked is just so we could talk about The Mandalorian and not so much Baby Yoda. Great. So, yeah, we're going to be talking a lot of Star Wars next week. Then we've got a number of great cosplayers coming up on the show. We're finishing up dates. Be looking out on the Planet Comicon for upcoming contests, the virtual contests. Be looking online for more of the Cosplay Crafter Series, more of the Talking Comics, more and more and more coming out of this. And make sure you come in the store and visit us at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop for your cosplay needs, and use that PCC Live 20. We want to thank you all for tuning in once again, and we'll see you all online. One of the nice things I always notice each week, we always get a couple extra thousand views the week after we broadcast. So that's always a good thing. So thank you all for tuning in and staying attached to these shows. And we'll talk to you guys. Oh, say thank you one last time to our other sponsors. That's NFM, Boulevard, U.S. Army, KCWE, Geico, UMB Bank, Xfinity, 5 Hour Energy, T-Mobile, Kansas City Mavericks, Kansas City Lives, and the great state of Oklahoma. thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you Tamara and Pros and Cons. We'll talk to you hopefully again on July 12th. So we'll see how far you guys get in conversations with Camwy. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
See
great
y'all
day.
later.
See ya.
Bye.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.